This Big Ten on CBS postgame report is presented by Belfour Property Restoration here with CBS Sports college football writer Richard Johnson. Richard, it was a tale of two halves indeed. What was different in the second half for the Trojans?
Hakeem, it always is a tale of two halves for USC. USC has only allowed 23 second-half points the entire season. This D'Anton Lynn defense comes out of the half with a point to prove, and they make the famed halftime adjustments that coaches will tell you, well, they don't really make adjustments at halftime, but whatever. They come out of the half, and they look better every single week. And, you know, I think this USC defense was playing with a chip on their shoulder because Wisconsin's co-defensive coordinator, that'd be Alex Grinch. Their defensive coordinator last year at USC, who got all that stick about they couldn't tackle, they couldn't stop a nosebleed, all that kind of stuff. You think this USC defense didn't come in this week with a point to prove? Well, they proved it in this game. Yes, the turnover, the pick six at the end there, a little lucky, bounces off the helmet, all that kind of stuff. I get it. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
That was really the knock on USC, right? Were they going to be physical enough in Big Ten play? They held their own against Michigan, except for that final drive when you got Khalil Mullings dragging guys down the field. You saw their physicality. Is this a change in identity for USC under D'Anton Lynn?
Yeah, I think it's both a change in identity and a, fortuitous opponent.
Yeah.
Wisconsin has no juice. Braden Locke, I understand, is in a tough situation. He is the backup quarterback, but I don't see anybody in the skill core for Wisconsin that gives you any semblance of big playability or medium playability. I just, where are the points going to come from Wisconsin this year? It's like an identity switch, right? Wisconsin looks like the team that can't have an efficient offense, that can't hold the ball, whereas USC, they just played keep away today, and they made mistakes. They made plenty of mistakes in the first half.
Miller Moss, he's a boss. Another week with 3 touchdown passes, also the rushing touchdown, 30 of 45 for 308. They bounce back after losing to Michigan last week, back home against Wisconsin, and they are not denied in the second half as they win at 38-21. Back here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Belfour. USC in the second half, outscoring Wisconsin 28-0. How about Miller Moss? How about Jacobe Lane? Deuce Robinson? The offense and the defense putting it together as USC earns its third double-digit comeback win since 2023. Fight on. Miller Moss, he's got that sauce. This Big Ten CBS Sports Game Report is presented by Belfour Property Restoration. Back here with Richard Johnson, and welcome in CBS Sports college football writer Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, we've talked a little bit about USC and Wisconsin here. Your reaction to what you saw from USC in the second half?
Well, I think after last week, I really wanted to see some resilience from this USC team. Of course, they fade away down the stretch after going down against Michigan. But in this game, they did not falter whenever they were faced with that physicality. I think that that's the most impressive thing about this performance from USC, is to have that adversity, is to deal with some of the issues with physicality early in this game. But Miller Moss was that guy. I mean, they did a tremendous job of coming out, continuing to move the ball, being aggressive, and ultimately, they were the better team for the vast majority of the 60 minutes. And the final score reflected it.
You know, it's funny sometimes in football, small things tell the story, right? You see 3 first-half turnovers for USC. You say, well, why wasn't USC able to really do much in the first half? Well, to turn the ball over. You know, it's the Big Ten football. I was promised good special teams, and yet I see 2 muff punts on the field. We can't have that, Hakeem Shehan. We cannot have that in this new Big Ten if that's how things are going to go. But no, in all seriousness, Shehan's right. USC comes out and clamps down in the second half. They adjust. They come out a lot better in the second half than they do in the first half, and they finish, right? They finish, and Wisconsin was not able to mount any type of comeback because Wisconsin just doesn't have any juice on offense. I just don't really see how Wisconsin's going to generate points over the course of this season because they cannot lean on a run game identity. That doesn't exist anymore. And Braden Locke at quarterback is the backup that came into this season with Tyler Van Dyke. So a little bit of soul searching for Wisconsin has to happen to figure out what their identity is going to be this season. What can they lean on?
Shehan, what have you learned about Miller Moss in 4 games so far this season?
Well, I think he has the juice. It's the first thing that you have to say about it.
I'm throwing out he's got the sauce. He's got the juice. We might as well throw him in the Heisman race, right?
Well, I think that the thing that you have to love about him is that for what you love about Caleb Williams, I mean, he was a guy who thrived outside of structure. Miller Moss is doing a tremendous job in structure, I think, of finding open guys or spreading the ball around. I think we also have to point out, I mean, Jacobe Lane at wide receiver is a revelation to this point. 10 catches, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I think that Miller Moss is doing such a great job of spreading the ball around that it's hard to pin down. If you're an opposing defense, you can't just blanket one guy, right? This isn't a couple years ago where, you know, some of the Lincoln Riley offenses, you know, you clamp down on CeeDee Lamb or one of these players. They have so many guys, and Miller Moss is so good at finding them that I think that it makes them one of the more dangerous offenses in college football to try to defend.
The big thing for me with Miller Moss is how he navigates in the pocket, right? This is not Caleb Williams. He's not going to run around, scramble, and do all that scramble drill stuff. He's going to be efficient with his footwork in the pocket. And that also helps you extend plays. Extending plays is not just running around towards the sideline. Extending plays is the little things, right? You know, it's the art form that Tom Brady, for instance, really just pioneered. I mean, you saw how he was able to make small movements and extend plays. And Miller Moss does that. And Miller Moss gives you that element. I like his accuracy and obviously who he's throwing to, not just Jacobe Lane, but Zach Branch is just a live wire. He's a jitterbug. Just get the ball in his hands. Don't fumble the punt next time, but just get the ball in his hands and watch him go. And what Woody Marks gives them at running back, enough. Just enough in the running game.
Shehan, when you look at this game in the first half, and had USC lost this game, we would have come on here and said, well, you can't have 3 first-half turnovers. You can't not be able to execute off of a muffed punt. But they did execute. They outscored the Wisconsin Badgers 28-0 in the second half. What do you take away in terms of this USC team, what it showed you in this game?
Well, we talk a lot about this offense, but I do want to give some flowers to the defense. I think, you know, you look in the first half, Wisconsin was moving the ball pretty well on the ground, but they clamped down. They held them under 3 yards per carry in the second half. You mentioned that 0 number offensively as well. I think USC's defense is starting to rise to the occasion as well. Now, are they an elite unit? Of course not. But I think that they are a good enough unit for this team to contend. And I think, again, you know, we talk so much about this offense, but the fact that they've become so good down to down, play to play. I think that that's so critical for this team heading into the Big Ten, because I think you look across this league and quarterback play and down-to-down efficiency, it really comes at a premium, especially when you're playing some of the defense that you're able to play. You know, of course, Richard mentioned Woody Marks, and I think that he gives them a whole lot at the running back position. I do want to see USC become a little more efficient down-to-down running the ball. There were times in this game wherever they really did put a lot of the game and a lot of the offense on Miller Moss. And 45 pass attempts in this game, 37 rush attempts, obviously. You know, some of it was game flow, but I would like to see a little bit more consistency from that position, and some of that does come back to an offensive line that they're still kind of tinkering with.
When you look at USC's roster and what they were supposed to do this season, they're supposed to go on. They're supposed to beat Wisconsin at home. That was probably you go, yep, they should probably beat them. They should probably beat Minnesota next week. Penn State's going to be a different battle. That's on the road. That's going to be an absolute madhouse. You already went to the big house. You saw what happened there. You go to Happy Valley. When you look at resistance in terms of their schedule, where do you look at on the schedule?
Obviously, that Penn State game is where you look at first, because as Shehan brings up, that offensive line is young. And offensive line, it takes some gelling. Sometimes you got to move some pieces around, but they were good enough, obviously, today to keep Miller Moss upright. So that's the thing that I look at moving forward in the season for USC, especially if they are going to put it on Miller Moss going down the stretch, 40, 45, 50 passing attempts, which, again, like Shehan said, you don't really want. You'd love to be able to run the ball, especially when you get at Maryland, at Washington. You never know what the weather's going to be like in November. In Seattle, you know, you're going to get some of these spots where you may have to run the ball because it may be a little chilly, but that's what you signed up for when you joined this league, Trojans.
Yeah, they get that Penn State game at home, fortunately for them. They don't have to go on the road there, but they do have to go on the road a couple of times more here in the Big Ten. So in terms of a college football playoff resume, is this a team that you can see at the end of the season go, yeah, they're one of the 12?
Absolutely, and it is all going to come down to, I think, that final game of the season against Notre Dame, because that Notre Dame result against Northern Illinois, fishy.
Shaky.
It lies to you a little bit, all right? I don't think Notre Dame is that team. I think Notre Dame is the team that you saw today, the team that you saw against Purdue a couple weeks ago. They're fine. They're fine. And if they win out, that end of season game is going to be massive. USC Notre Dame.
Well, and I think that the schedule kind of sequences in a perfect way in some ways. You play this game against Wisconsin. Next week, it's up against Minnesota. Penn State is going to be that team that really tests your mettle in the trenches. If you're able to survive those games, I think that it's just about home free up until that Notre Dame game. They're going to be favored in the vast majority of their games for the rest of the year. They probably will even be favored in that game against Notre Dame. But this is also an opportunity for the team to continue to build up in the trenches, continue to get more physical, have that offensive line come along, and hopefully you're playing your best football of the year whenever you go into that matchup against Notre Dame.
USC, welcome to the Big Ten. They get their first conference win as they beat Wisconsin, shut them out in the second half. Time now for the Belfour player of the game. Shehan, will go your way first. Who stood out to you?
It has to be Jacobe Lane. I think that when you look at this USC team, they've been looking for a guy to step up as wide receiver 1. And 2 games with 50 yards and a touchdown coming in, but this was his breakout performance in so many ways. 10 catches, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. But more than that, it's just the unbelievable plays that he was making. There was, of course, the toe tapper down the sideline to convert on a second down. There was the play, the fade in the end zone where he comes down with it through traffic. I think that they have been looking for a #1 receiver to step up. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be Jacobe Lane, but he has developed so much from 2023 to 2024. He looks like a big-time player for this program, and I think that if he can continue to be a 100-yard type receiver for this USC team, I mean, the sky's the limit heading forward.
For me, it's Miller Moss. It's Miller time. Gotta be. This guy.
He's got the juice, remember?
He's got the juice. He's got the sauce. He got everything.
He shops at Hugo Boss.
Absolutely. I don't mean to take this away from him because I do think Miller Moss was that good today. But you could put me and you could put you, Hakeem, in a Lincoln Riley offense, and you could produce. Lincoln Riley finds ways to get the best out of whoever is behind center and the signal caller, and it's Miller Moss's time up at QBU.
Jacobe Lane, that was like a fantasy football line. 10 catches, 13 targets, 105, and 2 touchdowns. I need him on my fantasy football team in college football. Shehan, Richard, great stuff here on CBS Sports HQ, wrapping up USC and Wisconsin. There it is. Moss looking like a boss in the second half. Shouts to the graphics team. They get it. They get it. First half, how's your point differential? -11. Second half, +28. 3 touchdowns in the second half for Miller Moss. Looking like a boss at home as USC earns its first Big Ten conference win.